Game is going to have a lot of drama to it, and I'm assuming a ton of reaction. And we start with Mike in South Carolina. Mike, good afternoon. How are you today?
Well, I think you know how I am. That's the most disappointing loss I've had since Billy Sims fumbled away a possible national championship at Nebraska that year, our only loss. They stay with you. I remember that one, and I will always remember this one. And I got to agree with you about 110% on everything, Chris. I mean, you nailed it. Terrible play call in the second half. It was like we were getting cute because we were so on the first half. Everything they did just looked great. And I told my son that bonehead play before halftime, I said, well, we just gave him a little momentum. The last thing we need to do, which we did, which was stupid. And I don't, you know, it was a moment too big for the coach. I don't see how we could say that when he was so good the first half. Let's give Kirby some due. He made great adjustments at halftime, but we choked. That's as simple as I can put it. We choked. I salute Georgia. They got it done. But that was just a terrible play calling. Why are you not throwing the ball more? He's the Heisman winner. Let him loose. If he's hurt, then put in the backup. And he didn't look hurt on that long pass he threw.
And nor did he look hurt on that run, which set up their touchdown.
Yes,
in the fourth quarter. He banged into the defensive back and made sure he stared him down because, you know, Mayfield's one of these guys who thinks he thinks he's tough, and he's one of these guys that gets in his own way sometimes.
I know, but that's what makes him, Chris. He's not the player he is without that attitude. I know how it rubs people wrong, and if you're not a fan of Oklahoma, I could see. If I wasn't a fan of Oklahoma, I wouldn't like him. I love him personally because if we don't have him these last 3 years, we're not near the team we are. Now he's gone. You never know when you're going to get an opportunity like this again. I told you we could put up 35 or 40 on anybody in the country, but at the end of the day, you got to play a little defense. But our defense gave us a chance. They made a play, they scored a touchdown, and they stopped them. And all we got to do is get a few first downs, and it's Oklahoma and Alabama, which would have been just the names there are great enough. And if Georgia goes and beats Alabama, here's another one that we just choked away.
Yeah, listen, this is a loss if you're an Oklahoma Sooner fan that would stick in your craw for a long, long, long time. There's no way around it. It would bother you. And again, don't be blaming the Oklahoma defense on this game. They gave you 7 points with what they did from a turnover standpoint. You gave them your offense 7 points, so you take that away right away. The overtimes, you can't pay attention to the overtimes. They scored 9 points in overtime, so what they have, about 45 something points going into the overtime. So you take away one of the touchdowns. They scored 38 points. Now listen, that's a lot, and they rushed the ball all over Oklahoma, but they are not a defensive team. That is what's going to occur. You're going to have to win that game with your offense, and Riley and the quarterback, Mayfield, they had that game in the palm of their hands in that second half, and they did not respond. They had 4 series, 2 in regulation, 2 in overtime. They had the whole third quarter. All right, I understand there's going to be a couple of series there where you're not going to score every time, but they were awful in half number 2, and then very, very tight, incredibly tight late. Tight. Oh, they tight. Oh, my God, they were afraid to lose. And, again, when you do that in that situation against, let's face it, pound for pound, Georgia's better. They got better players on defense than Alabama does. They have better running backs, although Anderson's excellent. They got probably a little better balanced team all over they got a better roster. I think if you ask me that, if you count the defense, they probably got a better roster. And, from that standpoint, away you go. And by the way, for Oklahoma, can you get a punter? By the way, how about getting a punter? You got to have the kicker punting. He stunk punting the football. Can you get a punter guy in perfect weather? Can you kick a 50-yarder once in a while instead of kicking everything 30 yards and Georgia being set up at the 35-yard line? Now, that's another thing. And you get the same guy doing it twice. Can you get a punter in there? Go recruit a punter. That's not that difficult. You're Oklahoma. A plant can get into Oklahoma. Go recruit somebody who can kick the ball high and far. It's not that difficult. Go find somebody. That's another thing that killed them in the game. Their punting was so bad, it was mind-boggling. Oh, God, the game drove me crazy. Here is Andy in Seattle. Got a chance. Andy, good afternoon. How are you today? What do you have for me?
Hey, good, thanks, Doggy. Hey, don't waste your time with Shape of Water. I know you got Oscar obligations, but
I would never watch it. I would never. I mean, anytime that you see the critics who love these weird movies, throw it out the window, because they always get you in trouble. Throw it out the window. Shape of Water. There's 4 or 5 of them. The bird thing that Keaton did a couple of years ago that won the Oscar was a piece of garbage. The movie last year that I think it won the Oscar, did it not? No. La La Land was overrated. And the other movie about the drug dealer there in California, in Florida, who turned out to be gay, that was as big a waste of time as you're ever going to see in your life. Be careful with the critics love a movie. It's very dangerous. You may continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, that Rose Bowl was great. No football fatigue, even though the Sugar Bowl ended up being bad. But everyone's got their own times where it's like, Oklahoma blew it, but Georgia was reeling after that fumble return touchdown. Then they went 3 and out. That's when Mayfield had a chance to deliver. You're up 7 with 5 minutes left, and for whatever reason they didn't. I thought another haunting sequence for them. Georgia's first possession in the first overtime, that tight end dropped the ball on the 3rd down. I thought Georgia's got to settle for 3. Oklahoma's going to take it, and for whatever reason, that tight play calling. I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but it's going to haunt them forever. I mean, you see it in basketball sometimes when teams take the air out of their own basketball a couple of minutes too soon, and you become your own worst enemy. And like you said, Lincoln Riley, he's only 32. He might be able to learn from this, but today is not the day to think about close calls and learning mistakes.
This is a chance, Andy, to have won a championship, and Oklahoma blew it. Simple as that. Now, I don't know if they would have beaten Alabama anyway, but they blew it. That was an atrocious. They gagged. There's no way around it, folks. Say what it was. Say it like it is. Don't pretend. And give Georgia their due. Georgia was persevered. They worked their rear end off. Michelle gets the game-winning touchdown after the awful fumble. All that. And Chubb is excellent, and they hung in there, and they hung in there, and they hung in there. They made some adjustments defensively. Give them all the credit in the world. I have no issues with it whatsoever. They recovered off that bad loss to Auburn, and they have recovered, and they found themselves in a championship game 70 miles from campus. So from that standpoint, let's give Georgia all the credit in the world. But for this moment, this day, this is right up there with the Falcons and against the Patriots. It's not that far away. It's not that far away. You had a 31-14 lead. You had a 17-point lead late in the half when you were unstoppable and you lost this game. That is as bad as it gets. Huck in Missouri, a chance for him. Huck, good afternoon. How are you today?
Chris, I've not been this disappointed in a long time. The Oklahoma Sooners are the only team in sports that I live and die by. I've got teams in other sports I like and I root for, but I live and die by the Sooners, and I'm awfully disgusted. I haven't eaten a bite since. I don't know what happened. I really don't. There were so many scenarios that just make you sick to your stomach if you're a fan. Mike, South Carolina, I feel your pain, bud.
What bothers you? What bothers you the most now, from a Sooner perspective?
What bothers me is overtime. It's a miracle that Georgia didn't score a touchdown with their first possession. Okay, we forced them to kick a field goal. It's 4th down. We run the ball 3 times. It's 4th and 1.5, 2, and they kicked the field goal to send it in the second overtime. I knew we wasn't going to win the game in overtime if it went 2 or 3, overtimes. That right there, Heisman Trophy winner, best quarterback in the history of the school, in my opinion. 4th and 1, you don't kick a, you go for the win. You go for the win on a short field. They're playing from the 25-yard line. It benefits a run team, and that's what Georgia is. It's a miracle we stopped them to begin with, and they didn't score. Right there, I think you go win the football game. And we kicked a field goal when we went to the second overtime, and at that point,
I thought that too. I thought then was worse, because when they kicked the field goal in the second overtime, it was maybe not 4th and short, but it was no more than 4th and 2, and you knew the field goal was not going to be good enough. I thought in that second possession in overtime, that is Huck when they needed to score the touchdown more than the first possession. Because the first possession, you kick the field goal, you get out of the first overtime, and you get the ball first in the second overtime. And then, you must score a touchdown there. And they kicked the field goal. I had to look at it. It was 4th and short, and they opted for that field goal. That bothered me more than the first one, to be honest with you, in the overtimes. Bothered me more. The second time.
Chris, I've been trying to figure out what went wrong. The way I thought Lincoln Riley called a hell of a first half. He was creative. He took chances. I don't know what happened in that locker room at halftime. I have no idea. That second half felt like Bob Stoops to me. It really did. And I kind of wonder, and I don't know, Chris. I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm just trying to make sense of it all. I wonder if, and I believe Bob Stoops was in that locker room at halftime. I really do. I wonder if Lincoln Riley went to Bob Stoops and said, "How do I bring this thing home, Bob? What do I do?"
By the way, calling Bob Stoops a legend, as they did yesterday, Fowler did. What are you, a legend in what regard? And he's not a legend. What? Bear Bryant's a legend. How is Bob Stoops, who lost everybody? How the hell is he a legend? I mean, beat Chris Wenke in a championship game. 18-10, whatever that Boar Fest. How is he a legend? He ain't a legend. My God. Not a bad coach, but not a legend. Jeez. I don't know what Riley did in the second half. I wish I had the answer for you. I don't know what got into them. They got tight. I think you got to give Georgia some credit. I mean, they took apart Oklahoma on that first drive when Oklahoma went 3 and out in the third quarter. But again, who was it who said it? Andy said it, or is it Mike? Think about this for a second, okay? They're getting blitzed in the second half. Blitzed. They score to tie the game. All right, about 9 minutes to go. They kick off, and then whatever it was, second or third play, it was like third down. Second and third play, he fumbles, and they take the lead. And then they make him punt. Think about that for a minute. They score again, and then force a 3 and out. Think about it. I mean, that is an incredible stretch. They have the football with a lead. 4.5, 5 minutes to go. With the best quarterback in the country, at least from a voting standpoint, with a prolific offense. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. If nothing else, you have to make Georgia use their timeouts, and you got to pin them deep with a punt with 1.5 minutes to go in the game. At least do that. All right, maybe 5 minutes is asking too much to run all those plays, but did they get a first down in that drive, Eddie? Could you look that up for me with the play-by-play sheet? But in that sequence, and you lost the football game. Wow. And I tell you, if you live in Norman, that game, as the Billy Sims fumble, go ahead. That game will live in infamy if you're in Oklahoma. Sports time. Update time with Dan Lang.